and gentlemen, before I give you a brief about the day ahead, I would like to take the opportunity to say a few words about our organizers here. Bankers Club that include RBI and 28 leading banks operating within the state. And its objective is to serve the informational, career and educational requirement of bankers. The mission of the club is to provide an enduring neutral platform for fostering relationships and maximizing professional development through a series of meetings, events, activities, sharing of information, expertise and experience. The Bankers Club Bhubaneswar has embarked on a journey of taking up intellectual and social activities by leveraging on the enormous expertise and experience of its members. In fact, this conclave is just the first splash in a series of mega events that the club is planning to unfold very soon. Coming back to the conclave for which we all have gathered here today, the other important role in organizing this wonderful event has been played by the Political and Business Daily, essentially a business newspaper with a strong political content. It is published simultaneously from New Delhi and Odisha. We will be having a plenary session, 4 technical sessions and an interactive and concluding session. The themes are as relevant as the conclave itself. Banking, the catalyst to economic growth of Odisha will be the topic for our plenary session. The technical sessions will have themes such as tourism and hospitality for economic growth of Odisha, financial inclusion for inclusive growth, accelerating industrial growth for the economic development and job creation, and supply chain management key to agriculture development in Odisha. All these, I'm sure, will go a long way in contributing to the wisdom database of the policy makers, operational bankers, as well as members of the state. I would like to take the opportunity to inform here that each and every discussion that is taking place here or that will be going to take place in this conclave will be preserved online thanks to the efforts of Odisha Live, which is capturing all of it online. Odisha Live is one of the media partners for this event along with OTV. The event has been powered by SBI and all the member banks like RBI and the 28 leading banks operating within the state are supporting this conclave. So gentlemen, I think we should get started, and the traditional way to start is always the best way to start. That is by lighting the ceremonial lamp. So I would like to request our chief guest, Shri G.C. Pati, IAS Chief Secretary Odisha, our guest of honor, Shri H.R. Khan, DG RBI, Shri P.K. Jaina, Regional Director, RBI Bhubaneswar and President Bankers Club, Shri K. M. Trivedi, CGM SBI and Senior Vice President Bankers Club, and Shri B.K. Mishra, Resident Editor, Political and Business Daily, to please light the lamp and inaugurate the conclave. We'll start with the plenary session, and the topic, like I said, banking, the catalyst to economic growth of Odisha. The entire objective of the conclave is reflected in this particular theme. So I would like to invite onto the dais without any delay our esteemed speakers. Chief guest, Shri G.C. Pati, IAS Chief Secretary Odisha, a dynamic IAS officer who has deftly handled a wide range of portfolios in the state from industries and finance to agriculture and rural development, carving success stories in each department. Our guest of honor, Shri H.R. Khan, DG RBI, who carries the distinction of making phenomenal contribution to India's banking and finance system in the field of rural credit, financial inclusion, internal debt management, external investment, and exchange control. It is a privilege that his early schooling and master's degree come from this very city of Bhubaneswar. I would also like to invite Shri P.K. Jaina, Regional Director, RBI Bhubaneswar, and the President Bankers Club. He joined RBI as a Grade B officer in 1984, and during his 30 years of career has worked in various centers of RBI, including Patna, Mumbai, Bhubaneswar, Delhi, and Kolkata, has had the experience of working at all important posts. He'll also be chairing the session. We'd like to invite Shri K. M. Trivedi, CGM SBI, and Senior Vice President Bankers Club, a very experienced banker, now at the helm of affairs in the largest bank of the country in Odisha, extremely dynamic and versatile. And I would like to lastly invite Sri B.K. Mishra, Resident Editor, Political and Business Daily, a senior journalist of Odisha. Sri Mishra has already taken PBD to great heights of success under his leadership. Can I request all the gentlemen to please come to the dais? And yes, let's welcome them with a huge round of applause. We would like to welcome all our dignitaries with lovely, lovely flower bouquets, as lovely as them. Thank you, girls. Well, I would now like to invite Sri P.K. Jaina, Regional Director, RBI Bhubaneswar, and the President, Bankers Club Bhubaneswar, to please present the welcome address.
Respected Chief Secretary, Sri G.C. Pati, our esteemed Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India, Sri H.R. Khan, Mr. K.M. Trivedi, CGM, State Bank of India, Local Head Office, Bhubaneswar, Mr. B.K. Mishra, President Editor, PBD, my banker colleagues, friends and guests from the academic fraternity, senior officials of the government, print and electronic media representatives, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, as the President of the Bankers Club at Bhubaneswar, I extend a very, very hearty welcome to all of you. I thought I will give a brief introduction about the Bankers Club. The bankers community knows what a Bankers Club. For the non-banking community, I can say that it's an informal body where it's a forum for bonding, sharing of knowledge, sharing of information, and also in a way contribute to society in whatever manner possible by way of CSR or any activity that they can undertake to take the economy of the place where they work. I think in all over India, almost all the major cities, we have a Bankers Club. In Odisha also we have, but the activities of the Bankers Club had remained quite confined to within. So we had been thinking for some time as to why not take Bankers Club to a broader canvas. Bankers, as you know, are a major player, major stakeholder in growth of any economy. They do a lot of things, they undo a lot of things, there is a lot of expectation from them, they meet some of them, they fail in some of them. There are issues, there are constraints. But one thing I can say on behalf of the bankers community, the commitment is never lacking. There are constraints within which they operate, and those constraints are to be overcome. So when I came here almost a year back, and during the course of discussions we had been having, we thought, we all discuss within, in-house, as to what is our problem. While we have some limited forums when we interact with government officials and various other forums, industry associations and all that. But we thought, why not go to a broader forum where involve all the stakeholders, come out with some of the issues and find some answer. If you can't get all the answers correct, at least try to make an attempt to reach the best of it, make the best of it. That is the objective with which we thought we'll organize such a conclave, and PVD, the resident editor, Mr. Bisra, he had a discussion with us, and that's how we are. We are wondering as to what we should be having as our theme. There are plenty of them. We have flagged one for the plenary session and 4 technical sessions we have for today. And it's not that these are the most important issues. There are several other issues also, but we thought let's flag some of the issues first and take things forward. I'm really overwhelmed by the presence of so many people out here, and we expect during the panel discussions to have more guests, and I'm sure the ideas that will come from these forums will give some clue as to how do we answer whatever challenges that we have got. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite our chief guest, our Chief Secretary, Sri G.C. Pati, Chief Secretary of Odisha, to please address the gathering here.
Mr. Khan, Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India, Mr. Jena, the Chief General Manager, State Bank, Mr. Misra. First of all, let me compliment the Bankers Club for organizing this conference, which is very timely and which is quite appropriate for Odisha. The seminar, the conference today is very timely, and we know that the role of bank is more important in the context of a state like Odisha, where there is enormous potential to script the story of growth and economic growth and prosperity. So that I sincerely seek support from the banking industry to finance agri-infrastructure in the state. Odisha has also great potential to be the leading state in agriculture, SME and tourism sector, as has been demonstrated by our esteemed artists. And it is very heartening that the conclave has devoted sessions for brainstorming on these topics, as well as industrial growth, which is very important for the economic growth of the state.
The souvenir for this conclave. Can we have a huge round of applause? The PBD Odisha Economic and Banking Conclave souvenir. Of course, we can't allow our chief guest to leave the dais without presenting him a small token of appreciation. So can we please have the memento? And I'll request Shri P.K. Jena to please present him as our gesture of appreciation. It's small, but it's heavy, let me tell you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this conclave. It was an honor to have you here. So I would now request Shri B.K. Mishra, Resident Editor, Political and Business Daily, to please come here and speak a few words.
Respected guest of honor, Sri Harun Rashid Khan, Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India. Respected Sri P.K. Jena, Regional Director, Reserve Bank of India, Bhubaneswar. Respected Sri K.M. Trivedi, Chief General Manager, State Bank of India, Bhubaneswar. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to this August gathering. We have amongst us here, and shall be joining us later during the course of the day, an array of experts, luminaries and visionaries, all bound by the same goal of ushering in a new era of development and growth in the economy of Odisha. We shall have the privilege to partake of the thoughts and strategies of the top echelons of three key drivers of growth: banks, their regulators, Reserve Bank of India, and the policymakers, the state government. For banking to leave its mark among the people of the state of Odisha, these three pivotal wings have to synergize their efforts and strengths, and this conclave would have achieved its goal if such a platform is strengthened, where these three important players of the state economy would coalesce their strategies and missions. At this point, I wish to express my gratitude to Bankers Club of Bhubaneswar for materializing the idea of holding this conclave. As the resident editor of the Political and Business Daily, I consider it a great privilege to be the co-host of this important event. The newspaper, Political and Business Daily, was launched by its editor, Sri Punit Nanda, in May 2006 in New Delhi. Its Odisha edition got underway in 2011. PBD has effectively covered all the events which shaped the destiny of the state during the recent time. Apart from discharging its duties as a responsible newspaper, Political and Business Daily has also tried to contribute to the state in its own way by organizing seminars, conclaves, and supporting such other initiatives. On 20th August 2012, PBD had organized a banking conference which was attended by a host of dignitaries. Sri Deepak Mahanti, the Executive Director of RBI, in his keynote address, had elucidated how effectively banks are contributing to the growth of state's economy. States Ministers for Agriculture, Fisheries and Animal Resources, Panchayati Raj, Development Commissioner and other bureaucrats, chartered accountants, Regional Director of RBI, CGM, State Bank of India, General Manager, SIDBI were among other important participants who deliberated in that event. Eminent economist of the country, Dr. Santosh Kumar Panda, who was the Director of Delhi School of Economics and now Dean in South Asian University in New Delhi, has also addressed another such event by PBD in 2012. Port Lore, an event of ports, logistics and resources, was organized by PBD in February 2014. Union Shipping Secretary, Chief Secretary of Odisha, Chairman of the Inland Waterways Authority, Chairman Paradip Port Trust were among the host of dignitaries, and many stakeholders participated in the Port Lore. PBD has supported Rupantar, a Bhubaneswar-based literary organization, in organizing PBD Rupantar annual lecture. Eminent translator Professor Dr. Bikram Das and famous linguist Dr. B.M. Patnaik have delivered these annual lectures organized in 2012 and 2013. It gives great pleasure in informing you that during this short span of time, PBD Odisha, apart from establishing itself a newspaper of significance and organizing all these events, has also published 2 books, Odisha Files and Editor's Time Capsule. Besides the economic conclave, PBD has rendered constant support to furthering the cause of culture and literature in the state. PBD has conducted seminars and annual lectures on translation and on Bhagavad Gita, besides patronizing a journal on South Asian studies, Marg Odisha. PBD has endeared itself to its readers because of its fearless, transparent, investigative, and unbiased reporting in this age of agenda-driven journalism. When many big journalistic institutions are mired in shameful acts, PBD takes pride in its middle-of-the-road approach in its objective reporting. Coming to the present context, we look forward to a lot of churning of minds in the coming few sessions on various aspects of banking for the development of Odisha's economy. Banking as a driver of growth of different sectors of economy is really at crossroads in the state. It is the throes of painful change brought about by the prevailing conditions. The economy in the last few years has not been able to provide banking with the required fillip for surging ahead, nor have the banks done anything spectacular to have an impact on the economy. The issues relating to loans going bust have been the dominating story all over. The NPA growth in both agriculture and SME sectors have been phenomenal for all banks in the state. Can banks wash their hands off the problem by laying the blame on the state of the national economy? Have banks done their best to ensure proper appraisal, credit management, and finally effective recovery methods? If it is so, why there is such a wide divergence in the levels of NPAs of different banks? Banks should hone their credit skills because they cannot afford to be lax with the public money. RBI as a regulator has to ensure that the risk-focused supervision leaves no room for lackadaisical approach by banks in credit management. While it is heartening to note that society has appreciated the importance of financial inclusion as a strategy of development, there is still a lot to be done in this regard in Odisha. The CRISIL Inclusive Index set up by CRISIL returns a financial inclusion score of 40.6 in 2011 for Odisha, marginally higher than the national average of 40.1. But this should give our banks and the government little comfort because there is still a long way to go in bringing the most remote and unprivileged to the fold of banking. The job is cut out for the banks in the coming few years when the most inaccessible parts are to be covered. Banks in Odisha always fall far behind the mandatory minimum mark in case of utilization of deposits mopped up in the state for the purpose of lending. There is general feeling that banks somehow concoct the figure of figure by adding credit sanctioned elsewhere but utilized in the state to achieve the stipulated mark of 70%. This is distortion of facts since it tries to hide the real credit deposit ratio. When the amount sanctioned in other states is added to credit of Odisha, there is double counting of one credit amount. This anomaly should go with the intervention of RBI and the state government so that more money is utilized for the development of the state's economy. Then there are issues like promoting tourism industry or promoting clustered approach for development of localized industries or activities. Banks should make these their priority areas in the coming few years. The wind of change is blowing fast. Many new players are waiting at the gate to make their entry into the banking and financial fold. Being small and new players, they are unknown quantities as yet. The role and responsibility of the government of Odisha and the RBI grows manifold when final clearance is received by players like Bandhan, the payment banks, and the small banks to open their shops. Regulators should monitor the integration of these new players into the banking fold very carefully, lest the menace of the cheat fund and Ponzi schemes will be repeated. Now I won't stand between you and the deliberations and brainstorming on these burning issues. Hope you will enjoy the proceedings and continue and contribute constructively to the issues at hand. Let Odisha's development process get richer by the valuable inputs of experts and luminaries like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that was quite a few valuable suggestions from your side. I would now request our guest of honor, Shri H.R. Khan, Deputy Governor, RBI, to please come here and deliver the keynote address. Can we have a huge round of applause for him?
Mr. P.K. Jaina, Mr. Trivedi, Mr. Mishra, and Mr. Pati in absentia, my banker friends and colleagues, distinguished friends from media, other friends from banking community, academia, business, and all the invitees. It's my great pleasure to be here in one's own city and be part of economic and banking conclave organized by the Banker Club in association with Political and Business Delhi. Let me start with thanking and complimenting the team behind it for putting together this conclave, and I believe this is going to be an annual affair. And I must thank all the people involved in this. Odisha has a very rich history, but relatively poor present. As you know, is one of the poorest states. Things have happened rapidly, but still we continue to be in the bottom of the pyramid in a sense. If you see 1913-14, the net per capita income based on 2004-5 prices, Odisha is around 26,000 rupees, almost 2/3 of the national average of about around 40,000. And only 3 states are behind us: Assam, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh. Dr. Raghuram Rajan, when he was Chief Economic Advisor before he came as Governor of Reserve Bank of India in September, he was part of that group to evolve a composite development index for the purpose of resource allocation. And they have taken a host of parameters: poverty ratio, education, health, per capita consumption, urbanization, SC/ST population, financial inclusion, connectivity. So based on 10 parameters, they have come out with what is known as development stroke need index. And there, Odisha is at the top. Here top means you are at the bottom. Top means bottom. So 0.80 is our index, which means that we are at the bottom. So this is that composite development index, which was brought out this. Odisha had a bout of strong economic growth, which was much more than the national average for quite some time. But in the recent times, the overall pace of the state has slowed down. in line with, of course, what has slowed down in the rest of the country. But slowdown in Odisha has been much more than the slowdown in the rest of the country. For example, the real per capita income in Odisha had grown by 2.5% on an average in the last 5 years. The national average for per capita is around 4.7%. So this is the backdrop of the state of Odisha in the context of where we stand. But we know there are huge resources. I will come to that maybe at the, I don't have to tell that we have huge resources in terms of mines, minerals, and many people don't know that 11% of the water resources are in Odisha, and we have huge potential in terms of agriculture, services sector, tourism. I am very happy that you have included, and of course industry. All of us know, I don't have to tell this to banker colleagues here, the banking sector plays a very, very important and crucial role in a prosperity, economic prosperity of a particular region. In fact, this is the point is, which was mentioned by our compeer and also the chief guest, Mr. Pati. It's almost a truism, but the jury is still out on the issue, whether finance leads growth or it follows growth. As you have seen, sometimes over financialization, if the real sector doesn't really grow and finance moves ahead of the real sector, you will have serious accidents. And we have seen the recent global crisis, how it happened. If people eat credit rather than the real stuff, you could have a problem. So you have to have a balance between growth and banking. But let me not get into that debate, which follows first, chicken or egg. But I would like to very briefly reflect on whether the banking sector, given the huge potential as we saw and which was mentioned by Mr. Pati, is prepared and able to propel the high growth rate of economic growth in Odisha. When we talk about high growth rate and you are being part and partner of that, it means that you are not doing something charity. But if you are a partner in that growth process, you are also in the process get benefited. So it's a question of mutual benefit of the state and the banks who are functioning here. So how do they do the partnership in the growth momentum process? I'll very briefly talk about the current banking parameters to see how quickly the banks are doing here, and talk about bit about measures taken by RBI and now by government to expand the banking infrastructure, particularly some of the Odisha specific measures on banking penetration and financial inclusion. And I would conclude some thoughts on what should be done or could be done, including those by the banks, for the economic betterment of the state. When you talk about banking parameters, Odisha accounts for almost 3.3%. This is December 2013 figure. 3.3% of the total number of bank branches of commercial banks in the country, which is more or less comparable to the population share of the state, which is around 3.5% of the country. As on that same date, in December 2013, Odisha's share in all India bank deposit was 2.2%, which was slightly lower than the share in the net domestic product of the country at 2.5%. But what is striking, which the point which was mentioned by Mr. Pati and Mr. Mishra, is in the case of bank credit, share of Odisha is at 1.2%, which is quite relatively low. I don't want to get into the controversy of CD ratio because there are methodology issues and comparing apple with apple or comparing apple with orange. But the fact remains there are tremendous scope, and we have seen bit of decline in that. And when we talk about this financial inclusion, Mr. Mishra mentioned about Crucial Index. We are comparable. We have done quite a bit in the last 7-8 years. But still, if you see 2011 census, 45% of the households in Odisha are covered by bank accounts, whereas the national average is around 59%. So we have a gap of around 14%. There were some other studies which indicate that in terms of financial inclusion, Odisha is at that bottom. Of course, the financial inclusion has a qualitative dimension that possibly I will come little later. So the question to be addressed, whether this low share of bank credit indicates reluctance or apathy or hesitation on the part of the bankers, or there are issues of demand and other enabling conditions. Issue of absorbing capacity, issue of creating enabling environment, issue of credit culture, issue of entrepreneurship, issue of economic development. So which is hindering greater credit penetration? As we all know, as I mentioned, the finance will follow growth, or finance will follow the enterprise. So there is a case for seeing how the economy is growing so that banking can play a complementary role. Let me very quickly talk about three different segments of the economy of the state. We know broadly industry, agriculture and services. I broadly focus on industry and services. Odisha, the size of industry is very large, but level of industrialization is very low. This is a puzzle. I think if you look at try to solve this puzzle, you will get some of the answers. Share of industry is comparable to the national impact, slightly more than the national level, whereas the level of industrialization is low. Why do I say so? If you take 2013-14 figure, industry which includes mining, quarrying and manufacturing, electricity, gas, water supply, accounted for 24% of the gross SDP of the state. This is 7% larger. The national level is 17 to 18%. So our share is larger. And the share of agriculture and allied activities in GSDP of Odisha is around 19.6%, which is also slightly more than the national average of around 18%. Of course, services sector in Odisha obviously has to be lower, is around 56-57% compared to 64-65% at the national level. But when you talk about the size of industry, this large size, the large share of industry is mainly due to one particular segment of industry, which is mining and quarrying, which accounted for almost 9% of Odisha's GSDP compared to 2.1% of the GDP of the country. We have seen how this concentration risk can create a problem, and we have seen how it has happened. Mining activity has huge volatility, and we know the problems, what has happened, and there has been sharp decline in that sector, so it will have impact on industry. And we talk about level of, when I say industrialization is low, there is another way of looking at it. If you see the annual survey of industries of 2011-12 put out by Central Statistics Office, Odisha accounts for about 1.4% of the total number of operating factories, much less than its population. 2.1% of the total persons engaged and 2.1% of the net value added in the country. In fact, this net value added by industry has declined. It was 3.2% in 2008-9. It has declined to 2.2% in 11-12. And if you see the per capita value addition of industry, which is a proxy for indication of industrialization, is around 4,300 crore in Odisha in 2011-12, much lower than the national average of 6,900 crore. And if you take the subsector of manufacturing, the per capita net value addition is around 4,100 against the national average of 6,500. So this indicates the low level of industrialization. As I mentioned, partly it is because of skewed nature of one industry. These metals accounted for almost 65% of the total value of industrial output in Odisha. And way behind is chemicals, is around 9%, and fruit products around 5%. If you see, Odisha is only behind Maharashtra and Karnataka in terms of predominance of this basic metal segment. If this is the pattern of economy, if you come to the distribution of bank credit, this is broadly in line with the economic structure, but there are deviations and departures. Credit deployment broadly reflects the structure. As the share of agriculture to the total bank credit is around 16%, which is slightly lower than the share of agriculture in the GSDP. But this is much larger than the all India level. All India level share of agriculture bank credit is around 12%. Here it is around 15-16%. And if you see industry accounts for almost 27% of bank credit in Odisha, which is slightly higher than the share of industry in GSDP at 24%. At all India level, of course, industry accounts for 32% of the bank credit, which is almost double the share of industrial sector in the GDP. But again, the point I mentioned, the basic metals and metal products, they account for almost 12% of the net total bank credit in Odisha. And all India level, this is less than 6%. So there is a skewed pattern. Similarly, in other industrial groups, the bank credit penetration is quite low. In the services sector, bank credit 56% broadly matches this thing. But where we are possibly, there is scope is something, which is a session we have on tourism. I saw Mr. Sinha's article very quickly in that thing, where there are tremendous scope for the banks to get into. So that is a huge area for the services. Coming back to agriculture, Mr. Pati and others mentioned that agriculture is the major segment. 2/3 of the population know the only culture, which is agriculture. And what is, I told you that in terms of, in relation to the size, the credit is more, but what is the pattern of credit? We have huge number of KCCs, 40% are only utilized. There are issues regarding the pattern of the all India level. For example, commercial banks lend much more than the cooperative banks. Here the case is totally reverse. Commercial banks are much lower than the cooperative banks, partly because I understand the nature of subsidy which is given, the cooperative banks get, commercial banks don't get. All India level, 70% crop loan, 30% term loan. Here, more than 80% crop loan and less than 20% term loan. Term loan is something which will create the capacity to absorb credit, capital formation. Last 5 years, whatever plan has been done, agriculture term loan achievement has been around 40 to 45%. So this is the skewed pattern of agriculture financing. And there is a huge potential of handlooms. And the exposure of banks to the handloom sector is very limited. And we had some package, I understand, and the repeat dose has not. Why it has not happened, there is something which you will be in a better place to debate. Maybe we can discuss further, but as I told you, there are other factors. So this is broadly the pattern which emerges in terms of credit deployment in the state. Government and RBI are taking to see this banking penetration goes. As you know, we have relaxed branch expansion. Banks are free to open branches. 25% branches have to be opened in the unbanked area. Mr. mentioned about small banks and payment banks which are coming, so they will also add to the banking penetration, both in terms of credit deposit and, more importantly, for the payment banks will get into the remittance. You know, Odisha has a huge immigrant population, and that's a huge potential for remittance. And we had one of our board members, Mr. Nachiket Moore, who had come out with this committee report on financial inclusion, committee on comprehensive financial services for small business and low households. Quite a few recommendations have been made. We are working on that. We had recently, for example, allowed non-banking finance companies to become business correspondents. Distance stipulation of 30 kilometers has been removed. So quite a few steps have been taken. Now the government is working out on a Sampurna Vittiya Samaveshan plan. We are also involved in that. But we know there are issues relating to the BC model, their remuneration, their spread, their quality, level of attrition, making their business viable. And accounts are opened in huge number, accounts are not used, there is no cash in, there is no cash out, accounts don't pay out, banks do most of things thinking that this is a mandate, they don't converge this with their economic activity, and there are no supporting role to play in terms of creating this account as the hub for economic activity. Credit should flow in, debit should go out. So these transactions don't happen. If the transactions don't happen, balances don't build up, credit history is not built up, then really this account is only a starting point. So it doesn't become viable, remunerative for the banker, nor become sustainable for the beneficiary who thinks this is something to get a subsidiary or something to get a DBT at the end of it. So I think there are both quantity and quality aspects of financial inclusion. Let me not get into that. I think this is not something peculiar only to Odisha, but Odisha of course has other dimensions in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of connectivity, in terms of infrastructure, because agriculture is one area where we need lot of funds should flow. But for example, if you see in agriculture segment, we are one of the lowest in terms of fertilizer use. The national average is around 140 to 145 kgs per hectare. Odisha is around 90 kgs. In terms of irrigation, quite a few things have happened, but still we are 32% as against the national average of 44%. And if you see the production and productivity, we are almost in terms of cereal 2/3 of the national average. We have an university, we have a rice institute, and the other issues of agriculture is monocropping, or there is no lack of diversity. And so with the lack of diversity, there is no supply chain issues. But I am happy that at least certain things are happening in the area of horticulture and vegetables. And we have this problem of natural calamities, drought. So you have a shade-based approach is needed. And we have this issue of connectivity. If you see, Odisha's rural roads are road density is around 29%, much lower than the national average of 50%. I told you about irrigation. And of course, there are other infrastructural issues which even the Chief Secretary mentioned in terms of storage is one area we should be looking at. And we know the density, and there are extremist affected districts. So these are some of the factors which do affect the financial inclusion efforts of the banks. And of course we know huge forest covered area, and another area is very something which I think things are happening is this level of urbanization. The national average is around 31-32%, whereas the Odisha it is 16 to 17%. So that is another area why financial inclusion or banking penetration becomes issue. I am sure this plan of 100 smart cities which is coming, it will have its beneficial impact on the state. But 2-3 very points which has been done locally here in terms of financial inclusion is something which I must compliment the local bankers and the RBI. For example, this geo mapping of bank branches and ATMs, taking the help of Odisha Space Application Center, seeing that where actually we need there is no clustering. And something has also happened in financial inclusion which has not happened elsewhere, is we are crediting this MGNRA wages through the electronic benefit through the Reserve Bank. Money goes on T+1 basis. And paddy procurement also we had done through DBT. And the state government has been very proactive in offering their Gram Panchayat premises to open branches, and the Gram Panchayat level money is to be credited there. And I don't have to tell you the progress made up to beyond 2000 and less than 2000. So there have been quite a bit of progress, but then some of the targets which we set out for ourselves, I think, could not be fully met. I think you had a target of 800 branches to be opened, and I think so far we have missed around 459 or 460. So because still people feel that brick and mortar does help, but there are other issues as you mentioned, connectivity, extremism, all those factors have to be taken into account, and the overall economic growth scenario. So now what is to be done to see that there is much better growth in the state and there is much more effective way of banks partnering? One point which I mentioned is that there has to be more concerted and conscious efforts to promote industrialization, not only share of industry but industrialization through diversification of manufacturing activity. As I told you, the finance will follow where enterprise will go. The state government will have a role to play, because in terms of capital formation, the capital outlay, we have to see that there is an effect of state government spending which will have effect of crowding in the private entrepreneurs. So if you see the capital outlay on industry and minerals by the government, it has been very low. 5 lakhs rupees in 2012-13 and 10 lakhs rupees in 13-14 and 14-15 also 5 lakh. I wanted to recheck the figure, but it is so. This capital outlay is, if you see the all states put together, it is 2,800 crore, little over than more than 1% of their capital outlay. For example, state like Karnataka has 139 crore outlay and we have an outlay of 5 lakhs. Even the neighboring states, Bihar has 76, Chhattisgarh has 44 crores. So this is something we must spend some time. Similarly, the capital outlay for the agriculture sector in Odisha it is 2.2, whereas in all India it is 3.5. So there is a need for these capital outlays. And if you see, there are other, as I mentioned about this index, because I talked about physical infrastructure, we talked about rural infrastructure, but equally important is social infrastructure, because they will go in tandem, physical and social infrastructure. If you see the Human Development Index 2011, Odisha is 22nd in a cluster of 23 states. So you will be asking why 23? There are 28 now, 29 states. 23 because Assam is one and rest of the northeast is taken as one state for the purpose. So if you see that Human Development Index, the value of Odisha is 0.362, 22nd position, whereas the national average is 0.467. We had improved in the last few years, but major part of improvement was because of sharp increase in the income index. You know, this income, education and child mortality are the 3 components. But in the recent past, as I mentioned, since the income levels have dropped, the SDI again would have possibly dropped. So unless you have a high SDI index, you don't get a healthy, productive and workforce. And so that has a linkage with development. As I mentioned about the capital outlay, but there's another dimension of capital outlay. The capital disbursement of the Odisha has been 1740 billion, 1,74,400 crores. Looks very impressive. But unfortunately, out of this, 82% is cash investment or investment in treasury bills and securities. There are other states also who invest a lot. So there are, the average for many states are 45%, whereas in 82% we are investing in cash and in securities. So as I mentioned, there is a tremendous scope. Quite a few things are happening. I am aware of that, of using these resources. You know, Odisha is one of the very fiscally advanced state. There is no fiscally stressed state. Odisha has not been borrowing for the last 3-4 years. But then the other dimension of it, are you losing out opportunities? Are you losing out creating an enabling environment? I know industrialization or this capital outlay will not be the panacea for growth, because growth is something which is a complex set of factors, growth and development, because growth and development need not be the same thing. It could be history, it could be geography, it could be culture. In fact, same Raghuram Rajan committee report has talked about 2 broad sets of factors which contribute to growth momentum, development momentum. One is endowments and environment. Endowments in terms of resources, and environment is enabling environment. And when you talk in terms of institutions and governance process, so they do play a very important role. Of course, we know the quality of education, quality of standard of health, work ethic, discipline, law and order, quite a few things there are so many factors they combine together to see how the growth process takes place. We have been talking about what is the role of India in the context of Committee of the Nations. In fact, a few years ago, 5-7 years ago, we are thinking that we are going to become a superpower, we are going to catch up with China fast and maybe overtake China. And the world was looking at us because this is something where democracy and development has to go together. But last few years we saw that perception underwent change. And some of you, those who have read Ruchir Sarma's book, Breakout Nations, will know that what are the factors which contribute for the nations. It is not that all emerging countries will develop. They have natural endowment resources, but doesn't mean that automatically translate into huge growth and development potential. There has to be different enabling factors. So when we talk about breakout nations, countries like India, they are not a country, they are a continent. So it has to be a breakout states. So what is that there Odisha can become a breakout state? I mentioned some of them. You talked about tourism. There is a tremendous potential. I was asking Mr. Jannah whether we have a separate tagline other than Incredible India. For example, Madhya Pradesh says, heart of incredible India. Kerala says, God's own country, incredible India. Odisha has huge potential, we saw. So what is that? It is not just a question of tagline, whether you have the delivery capacity to do that. So this is something which one has to keep in mind. I think the banks, the government, all the media, everybody has a role to play, because when a particular region or a state develops, it contributes to the development of the country as a whole. So when we talk about local, we don't talk at the exclusive of national. So in fact, local, national, global, all is the continuum of the same spectrum. If Odisha develops, it contributes to the development of the country. I think bankers who have come with an all-India perspective, they keep moving, must keep this in mind that we should develop this area and develop our business in a sustainable manner. I know there are issues of NPAs and credit culture, but all of us have to work. So if you do that, our business grows, our profit grows. In the process, there is a national prosperity. There is an air of optimism. I think we must catch and that here also. There is one multinational company's name which is being talked about here, but throughout the world, in India, more particularly in Odisha, for the last 10 years, if not more, is POSCO. In fact, when we were children, we knew about POSCO because POSCO had a very strong football team, soccer team. They used to come and participate, if I am not mistaken, in Kalinga Cup or some other cups they have come. They used to come to India also to play football. A very strong football team from Korea. My first opportunity to visit abroad was, it so happened, was South Korea. And I visited Pohang. Pohang Steel Company is POSCO. Korea is a resource scarce country. They don't have natural resources. But the way they have developed, industrialized, diversified, export focus. The factory was impressive, perfect sanitation. There are quite a few. You will not realize you have got into a huge factory. But what impressed me, in fact, I have shared with some of my friends repeatedly. As you enter, the gate says, resources are limited, creativity is unlimited. Let me try to paraphrase that in the context of Odisha. In Odisha, resources are unlimited. Possibilities are unbounded. So what is that need to be done to see that these limitless resources and limitless possibilities are really translated into a sustainable growth model? I should say we should focus on 3 C's. So what we need is creativity. We saw that creativity. We need creativity for planning, visioning and planning. Commitment to execute and excel. And most important, as I mentioned, is convergence of efforts, whether it's a government or banks or NGO sector or the enterprises and the media and the civil society. If that doesn't happen, I think these possibilities and these resources will not be able to harness full potential. Let me wish the conference all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm glad to inform that we are also using this platform to give away awards to the banks of Odisha for their outstanding performance. So the first set of awards that we have here is for the maximum number of branches opened in rural and semi-urban areas during 2013-14. So the first prize, well, I'm not going to create any suspense here like those that happen in Filmfare Awards because these are not those awards, so I'll just straight away go to the winner. So the first prize goes to State Bank of India. 56 out of total 73 branches open in semi-urban and rural areas during the year. And what is nice is the one who's going to receive the award is here with us, and the one who's going to give away the award is also here with us. So I would request our guest of honor to present the award to Shri K.M. Trivedi, CGM, State Bank of India, Odisha Circle. The first prize. Thank you. Well, for the second prize, that goes to Canada Bank. 33 out of total 40 branches open in semi-urban and rural areas during this year. To receive the award, may I request Shri R.K. Swai, DGM and Circle Head, Odisha Circle, to please come here onto the dais. And I'll request our guest of honor, of course, to give away the award. So the third prize goes to Axis Bank. 32 out of 35 branches open in semi-urban and rural areas. And to receive the award, we have Shri Binod B. Chaudhary, Circle Head, Odisha. Moving on to the next set of awards, that is for highest credit deposit CD ratio of banks. Banks having more than 1,000 crore advance which have both sanctioned and utilized in this state. So the first prize goes to Oriental Bank of Commerce, 74.98%. And to receive the award, I would like to invite Zonal Head Shri D.K. Malhotra, Oriental Bank of Commerce. Congratulations, sir. The second prize goes to Indian Overseas Bank, 72.58%. And to receive the award, may I request Chief Regional Manager Shri P.K. Mahanti to please come up to the dais. The second prize winner, Indian Overseas Bank. Thank you, sir. For the third prize, we have, goes to HDFC Bank with 68.82%. Can I request Shri Sanjeev Mishra to come here and receive the award on behalf of Shri D. Senapati, Senior Vice President. Shri Sanjeev Mishra. The third prize winner, HDFC Bank. Thank you. Congratulations to all the winners, and let's hear it for them, all the winners, once again. May I now request Shri K.M. Trivedi, Chief General Manager, SBI Bhubaneswar Circle, and Senior Vice President, Bankers Club Bhubaneswar, to please come here and address the gathering.
Respected Shri H.R. Khan, Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India, Mr. P.K. Jaina, Regional Director, Reserve Bank of India, Bhubaneswar, Shri B.K. Mishra, Resident Editor, Political and Business Daily, dignitaries of the dais, people from the academia, from the various industry bodies, from the banking fraternity, especially my colleagues from the Bankers Club Bhubaneswar, friends from the media, both print and electronic. It gives me great pleasure to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of Bankers Club Bhubaneswar. Before I move ahead, I would like to just recall the last few sentences which the Deputy Governor spoke, the 3 C's which he has given. The 3 C's are definitely going to guide us, guide the bankers in Odisha towards bringing in economic prosperity and full banking services to the people of Odisha. This much I would like to assure on behalf of all members of the Bankers Club to the DG. Sir, we have already decided that all the 4,546 unbanked Gram Panchayats will be covered in a phased manner in the next 5 years. That will be fully implemented in both letter and spirit, and by the end of August 2015, definitely every household in this state will be having a bank account. These commitments we have made not only to the government but to ourselves also, and we assure you, sir, that we will leave no stone unturned to fulfill these commitments. I would also like to thank you, sir, for bringing out the problems, the issues which the state is facing. And what we feel is that the major casualty in the state are lack of entrepreneurship, because of which the credit absorption capacity is also not to the desired level. And despite the bankers trying, there is definitely a gap between what can be done and what has been done. But we will continue with our efforts under your able guidance, under the able guidance of the regulator, Reserve Bank of India, and we will ensure that whatever commitments we have made to the society and whatever we deliberate in this conference, they are implemented in toto so that the development is taken forward. The topics which we had selected for this conclave were all relevant for both economic development as well as employment generation in the state. And once these things are done, then the comprehensive development index which you talked about, definitely, sir, we will be moving from the 22nd position which we are at present to a much better position. I would like to thank you on behalf of everybody over here for the very, very enlightening speech which you gave, speech which was full of facts, full of statistics, and that really showed that this was coming from the heart of a son of the soil. And sir, we are thankful to you for sparing your time for coming to this place. I would also like to thank the chief guest, Shri G.C. Pati, IAS, the Chief Secretary of the state. He also expressed his expectations from the banking community, and like I told earlier, we are all committed to meet those expectations in the shortest possible time so that the development program of the state moves forward like a juggernaut, the word which Odisha has given to the dictionary, English dictionary. Thanking Mr. Jina would be, I think, out of place because he is the brain behind this conclave. But still, I would like to thank him for not only conceiving it, but also working extra hard for making this conclave a very, very big success. Mr. Mishra has been very kind in getting the media cover this entire event, and the supplements which have come out in today's issue of PBD Bhubaneswar, they are really, you can say, they are really worth preserving because they contain so much of information, so much of data about the economic development of the state that I would request all of you to keep it. Thank you, Mr. Mishra. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the other media partners, the OTV and Odisha Live, who are also covering this event, both from the electronic side and the internet side, and I'm sure that they will ensure that we get enough publicity so that whatever is discussed is also discussed outside this house, and then everybody is on the same page in the march of development for Odisha. I would also like to thank Mr. Subal Maharana, my own family member, an employee of State Bank of India, of which State Bank of India is proud of. He has been making sand art for quite some time, and he really excels in it. And today's animation, which was presented by Mr. Subal Maharana, his wife, and his two sons, that was something worth appreciating from the core of our hearts. Thank you, Mr. Maharana. I would like to thank all my bankers friends, all my guests, all people from the various industry bodies, from the academic institutions. I would also like to thank the hotel management for making us available with such beautiful facilities. I would also like to thank the compere. She has been handling the program so nicely. I would also like, in the end, I would also like to make a special mention of Mr. S.P. Mohanty, who has toiled endlessly for making this program a success. He has been doing everything on behalf of Bankers Club. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Well, I think he's already thanked all our esteemed dignitaries here, but we'll take it a step forward and also present some small tokens of appreciation to all our dignitaries here. So I would request Shri P.K. Jena, the President Bankers Club Bhubaneswar, to present memento to our guest of honor and the other dignitaries on the dais. So can we have the mementos, please? For our guest of honor, I request him to also present a memento to the Senior Vice President Bankers Club, Shri K.M. Trivedi. One memento to Shri B.K. Mishra, Resident Editor, Political and Business Daily. Yes, it would be highly unfair if we do not present one to Shri P.K. Jena, so I would request our Senior Vice President Bankers Club, Shri K.M. Trivedi, to present one to him. Thank you so much, gentlemen. That brings us to the end of the plenary session, but let me tell you, the conclave has just begun. So it's a long way to go. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.